Hi everyone and welcome to this Elementor Pro tutorial. In this video we're going to be having a look at how you can create similar overlapping sections effect. The topic for this tutorial has been suggested by one of our viewers, so if you guys have any other ideas, if you have any suggestions, maybe you have seen some cool effect on some other website, let us know and we can see if we can do a tutorial on it. So this is the website that we have used as a reference, and now we're going to try and recreate this same effect using Elementor Pro. Unfortunately, in the free version of Elementor, I haven't found anything like that that could replicate this effect and make it look nice and work properly. So we're gonna have to use the Pro version of Elementor. So on my website, I have tried to recreate the same layout. We're going to use 3 cards and we're going to try and make them overlap. Now let me show you how I built these cards. So I'm using Navigator and I totally recommend that you do that too, because now you're going to see, once we start animating these cards, you're going to see how helpful Navigator can actually be. So let's just put it here for now. Alright, so this is the section that is boxed and I have set the width, and the width is going to determine the size of your card if you're going to be animating cards. By the way, if you're interested in making the full page sections overlap, like the sections that take up the entire width of the page, it's also coming soon on our channel. So here you simply set the width of your card like that, so it doesn't take up all the width of your page. Then also the minimum height. Here are my settings, but you are free to set your own values in here. Then I created the intersection using the intersection widget. And inside I have created 2 columns. And in the style settings of this particular section, have set my background. In my case, it's gradient background, but you can also use the solid color, of course, or the image as a background of your section. We're pretty much done with the setup. All the cards on this page have been made the same way. I'm only using 3 of them for this tutorial, just so it's a little bit quicker to finish with the animation, but you are totally free to make as many cards as you need. So let's look at the example once again. As you see here, as you scroll down, the next card scrolls on top of the previous card, and the card underneath it like shrinks down and fades out. First, we're going to create the simpler version of this animation where the cards are simply going to slide on top of each other without the shrinking and fading out. This is going to be simple and quite fast. And then in order to enhance this animation, I'm also going to show you how you can add those effects too. And as you see here, the last card simply keeps up scrolling with the rest of the page. So now let's get back to our editor and try and do that. So the background of this section, like the parent section, you can see it in the navigator that this is the parent section, and inside we have the inner section with the rest of the contents of this section. So it has no background, so this thing here is transparent. It's absolutely transparent, and we need the parent section to be transparent, because if you set the white background for this section, it's going to look a little odd because you're going to see this white line here as this card is going to slide on top of this one. So since we're using Elementor Pro, now we're going to enable the sticky option. Let's click on the settings of this section. Clicking right here, going to advanced, and we have motion effects tab here. We need to click on this one, and we're going to have the sticky option. And we have to set it to top, but probably it is better to switch it off on mobile, but we're going to see how it works on the mobile device as well. So here's at the offset, If you increase it, if we look closely, we see that here we now have some more space between the top of the page and the section. So this is what the offset is, but we don't want any offset here. So let's set it to 0. Like that, it jumps a little bit. So let's see it in action. We have made our first card sticky. Let's see. So we're here above this card and we scroll down. As you scroll down, it looks a little bit jumpy in the editor, but once we're in the preview, it's gonna work smooth. This is what it is, and we scroll down, there is the second card, and we see that it slides underneath our card, which is obviously not what we want. We want it to slide on top of it. So what we're doing here is we need to go to Advanced and set the Z index. Let's set it to 10 here. Not the highest value, just some value that we have something to start with. So as you see in the navigator, I have named my cards, card 1, card 2, and card 3. And now I want to access the settings of the second card, but it's not really comfortable because this card, the first card, is being on top of the second card. So I can do it using a navigator. I simply click on the card 2, and here I am in the settings for the card 2. Let's go to Advanced and now increase the Z index. For the first card, we have set the 10. And for the second card, we need to set the higher value. So the second card is on top of the first card. Let's say 20. Good. Now, this card is on top. So it slides right on top of the previous card. Okay, now it works fine. Alright, now we should make the second card sticky as well. So we go to Motion Effects, Sticky, and set it to top. Okay, let's see how it works. So scrolling down, the first card sticks to the top of the viewport, then the second card slides on top of it and also sticks there, and there comes the third card. And we also have to set the Z index for it, and the value in the Z index has to be higher than the value in the Z index of the second card. So if it was 20 that time, it has to be 30. Alright, now it's on top. And if we want this card to slide on top of the two previous cards and then keep scrolling as we scroll down the page and reveal the rest of the page, like the sections that are placed down the page. So we don't have to make the third card sticky. So you don't have to make the last card of these sticky cards. You don't have to make it sticky. So let's just keep scrolling. So yeah, we have set the Z index for the card, but we forgot to set the Z index for the next section. Let's go here and set it to 30 as well. And for the next section too. So this is what happens. And it would be pretty much that for this effect if it wasn't for these two first cards, which you can clearly see as we scroll up. So there are two ways we can get rid of this. We can either cover them in some way, or we could make them disappear. Let's try and see if we can cover this card here that is peeking out. What I would do is to go to the settings of this section, the section that goes right after the third card, and increase the top padding, like really increase it to probably 800, maybe 600 to start with, and then try and add some negative margin, let's say minus 200. Or minus 300. Alright, just to play around with the values and see how it fits. And the Z index, I would bring the value down a little bit, so this third card is on top. So it covers this card underneath this third card. So it covers the second card. This card has to be on top of the second card, but underneath the third card. So try and set the z-index values that way. So it feels like we could add some more negative margin. This might be a little bit tricky to figure out, and you might be afraid it might not work on other screen resolutions. But we could see and figure this out, and I would not expect any problems because we're not doing anything really risky here, simply changing the paddings, margins, and z-indexes. So let's go to the preview and see how it works. As you see, it works a lot smoother in the preview, and as we keep scrolling, we don't see the cards picking out anywhere. So this was sort of the simpler version of this animation. You still have the cards, they still overlap, but there is not much going on, like not much animation, movement, not that exciting. So now let's see how we can make it a little bit more lively and interesting. By the way, once again, want to mention that all the rest of the sections that you have on your page, down below the page, have to have the higher z-index than your cards, because something like that might happen. So make sure that the rest of the sections, like here, just go to the settings of those sections, go to advanced, and just increase the z-index so it is higher than the z-index of your cards. And also make sure that your sections have a background. Now let's see if we can adjust it to the smaller screen somehow. For example, for a mobile device. The sticky effect is going to work on mobile devices for sure, but the sections themselves might look a little bit weird. So what we can do here is to access the responsivity settings. For example, let's click on this section. Let's go to advanced and let's just drop all of the settings that we already have here. Also, I want to go and hide this particular image on the mobile devices. This is how I can do it. Go to responsive mobile, and this is for this particular image. Then change the settings for each element. Make sure that they all look nice and that they are centered. Like that. This is how you can drop the margins and paddings for your elements. This does not erase the settings that you have on your desktop layout already. It only affects these settings for the mobile devices. So don't be afraid, you're not going to lose any of the settings that you already have. And I'm going to do the same with the rest of the cards. Now once we're done with the cards, let's work on that negative margin that we have set. Here, let's increase the padding for the mobile version now. Like that, maybe 300, and add the negative margin again so we cover these cards that are underneath. It works pretty fine, and I don't see any problem with it for now, but it's not always the best idea to use something like this, something like sticky sections for your mobile layouts. So before you use something like that, make sure it is tested and it works properly. Alright, now when we want to add some animation to these cards, it might be a little tricky. And the bad news here is that you will have to figure out some of the values yourself, depending on the size of your page and the number of the cards on your page. Let's see what I mean actually. So what I want to do here is to go to the settings of this inner section now. So not the parent section, which is card 1, but the inner section that is inside our card 1. There it is. So as we click on it, it is now selected. We can see that it's actually that particular card. Here are the styles. And if we go to advanced and motion effects, now we are going to need to work with the scrolling effects a little bit. The reason why it might be tricky to pick the values for these cards is because we're going to have their effects relative not to the viewport, but to the entire page. Let's see the difference. If you set the effects to be relative to the viewport, the height of your viewport is going to be 100%. And here you have these sliders, and this is the 100%. This is your height of the viewport. The viewport is what you can actually see on your screen. Everything that is outside your viewport that is not visible for you at the moment, it is not considered. But if you set the effects to be relative to the entire page, then it means that the height of your page, your entire page, is 100%. And since our elements become sticky as we reach them, as we scroll down the page, they are going to stay at the top of the viewport all the time. It means that no matter what settings we set for these particular effects, they're not going to affect the card, because the card is not going to be moving at all. It's going to be stuck here at the top of the viewport. This is why we need to set the effects to be relative to the entire page. This is why it becomes tricky a little bit, because you will need to pick different values. Your values are going to be different from mine because the height of your page is going to be different, the length of your page is different, the number of cards you're using is different, the size of the elements you're going to be using will be different. So I can only show you the workflow, and you're going to adjust it to your needs depending on the size of your page, the size of your elements, and the number of your cards. Let's see what we can do here. So first, set the effects to be relative to the entire page and not the viewport and not default, because default is usually the viewport. And let's set it to the entire page. Then let's start with transparency. So we're going to make this card disappear as the second card reaches it and covers the bigger part of the first card, okay? So let's click on transparency and choose fade out. Set the level to 100%. Not 10, but to 100. So we have to add the extra null. So it's a little jaggy here in the editor, but it works fine in the preview. The first card disappears because I have set the 35%. If I set the higher value, it is going to disappear a lot later, or if I set the smaller value, it is going to disappear a lot earlier. As you see, we haven't even reached it yet, but it has already disappeared. So the first slider, in this case, is this point at which this card is going to start fading out. The level is 100, and we set the 100 to make sure that the card is going to totally disappear. And not become a little bit transparent, but totally disappear. And the first point has to be 35% in my case, because if I open my entire page, I'm going to see that this particular card, the first card, is placed somewhere at this point, at the 35-ish % of the entire length of my page. I hope it makes sense. Now I have to do the same for the scale. Let's click on the scale property, direction scale up, not scale down, but scale up, because if we set scale down, it is gonna do something completely different, not what we need. So we need to set it to scale up. So for now, as our viewport reaches the 35%, it starts scaling up and disappearing. Okay, 35%. And now I'm going to bring this slider down to -10. And as you see here, the card becomes smaller now instead of growing bigger. And for now, as our second card reaches our viewport, the first card is almost completely gone. Like that. Okay, now let's try to do the same with the second card. But for now, as you can guess, we're going to need to apply different values. Because this card is a little bit down the page, and it's not going to be 35% this time, but it's going to be around 50%. Let's see what we can do here. Effects relative to entire page, not the viewport, then transparency. Set it to fade out. Slider up to 10 and then add one extra null. And then the first slider has to be moved to around 50, let's say 53 this time. And now let's try and scroll down. Maybe a little too early, let's say 55. I think 54 will do. Maybe let's set it back to 53. So, as you see, it is totally dependent on the case, on the particular page, on the particular set of cards, on the particular effect that you are going after. And I have to adjust my values depending on the position of these cards on my page and the actual length of my page. So you have to simply figure the workflow out, and then it's going to be easy. Now let's change the scale settings for this section. So it is scale up, bring the speed down to -10, and the first slider to the same value that we have set for the transparency. It was 53. 53, like that. And now as we scroll up, the second card slowly shrinks down and disappears. Now let's see it on the preview. There we go, this is what it looks like, all smooth and nice. Now our animations totally work. So this is pretty much it for this tutorial. Let me know if you liked it, if you found something useful and valuable for you, and go and try this on your website and let me know how it worked out. By the way, if you need a pre-made design for your web projects, check out TemplateMonster.com, where you can find thousands of ready-made website themes for any purpose and any business, suitable for both absolute beginners and seasoned web developers. Or if you want to buy WordPress themes and plugins in bulk, check out one subscription by TemplateMonster, where you can find over 10,000 products for website building, including WordPress themes, CMS templates, e-commerce templates, illustrations, plugins, graphics, and much more. All available for an unlimited number of downloads for an unlimited number of your projects. And I thank you so much for watching and see you in another tutorial.